World War II is remembered for tanks, aircraft, and massive fleets, but motorcycles played a quiet yet vital role across every front. Fast, agile, and inexpensive, they became essential for communication, reconnaissance, convoy escort, and battlefield coordination when radios failed. In a war driven by speed and movement, motorcycles were indispensable. Unlike tanks or trucks, they used little fuel, were easy to repair, and could travel where larger vehicles could not. Forest trails, deserts, ruined cities, and mountain roads became their domain. Every major nation adapted motorcycles to its needs, creating machines that reveal a largely forgotten side of World War II. Germany. BMW R75. Germany entered the war with one of the most advanced military motorcycle programs in the world. The BMW R75 was the centerpiece of this effort. Designed specifically for military use, it featured a powerful 750 cubic centimeters boxer engine and a driven sidecar wheel with a locking differential. This allowed the motorcycle to traverse mud, snow, and sand with remarkable stability. German units used the R75 extensively in North Africa, the Eastern Front, and Western Europe. It could carry 3 soldiers, ammunition, and even mount a machine gun. However, its complexity made it expensive and difficult to produce in large numbers, limiting its overall impact. Zündapp KS 750. Alongside the BMW R75, Germany fielded the Zündapp KS 750, a machine many soldiers considered even better. Built for durability rather than speed, the KS 750 featured excellent low-end torque and a reinforced frame designed for rough terrain. Its sidecar drive system was extremely effective in snow and mud, making it especially valuable on the Eastern Front. Soviet conditions were brutal, and many German vehicles failed there, but the Zündapp earned a reputation for reliability. Still, like the BMW, it was costly and time-consuming to manufacture. DKW NZ 350. Not all German motorcycles were heavy sidecar machines. The DKW NZ 350 represented a simpler approach. Powered by a 2-stroke engine, it was lightweight, easy to maintain, and cheap to produce. The NZ 350 was widely used by messengers, patrol units, and rear area forces. It lacked the rugged off-road capability of the heavier bikes but made up for it with simplicity and availability. Thousands were produced, making it one of Germany's most common motorcycles of the war. United States. Harley-Davidson WLA. Across the Atlantic, the United States relied heavily on motorcycles for communication and military policing. The most iconic of these was the Harley-Davidson WLA. Known as the Liberator, the WLA was powered by a 740 cubic centimeters V-twin engine and designed to be rugged and easy to repair. It featured high ground clearance, heavy-duty air filters, and reinforced components for military use. American forces used it in Europe, North Africa, and the Pacific. Indian 741 and 640B. Indian Motorcycle Company also contributed to the American war effort. The Indian 741 was a lightweight motorcycle intended for military use, though it lacked the power of the Harley-Davidson WLA. As a result, it was used mostly for training and domestic duties. Indian also produced the heavier 640B model, which saw service with military police and support units. Cushman Model 53. One of the most unusual American motorcycles of the war was the Cushman Model 53. Designed for airborne forces, the small motorcycle could be dropped by parachute with paratroopers. Lightweight and compact, it allowed soldiers to move quickly after landing behind enemy lines. Though limited in power and range, it represented the innovative ways motorcycles were adapted to new forms of warfare. United Kingdom. BSA M20. Britain relied on motorcycles extensively, especially for dispatch and escort duties. The BSA M20 became the most produced British military motorcycle of the war. It was powered by a simple side-valve engine that emphasized reliability over speed. The M20 was not fast, but it was extremely dependable. British and Commonwealth forces used it in Europe, Africa, and Asia. Its rugged construction allowed it to survive harsh conditions with minimal maintenance. Norton 16H. Another key British motorcycle was the Norton 16H. Known for its smooth engine and solid handling, the 16H was widely used by the British Army. It served in nearly every theater of the war and earned a reputation for reliability. Norton motorcycles were often favored for long-distance dispatch duties, where rider comfort and mechanical stability were essential. Matchless G3L. Later in the war, Britain introduced the Matchless G3L. Unlike earlier rigid frame designs, the G3L featured rear suspension, improving comfort and control over rough terrain. This made it especially valuable in post-D-Day Europe, where roads were often damaged or non-existent. The G3L represented the gradual evolution of military motorcycle design during the war. Soviet Union. M72. The Soviet Union relied heavily on motorcycles with sidecars, reflecting its need for rugged vehicles capable of operating in extreme climates. The M72 was the most important of these. Based on the German BMW R75, it was produced under license and later independently. The M72 was simple, durable, and well-suited to Soviet conditions. It was used extensively for reconnaissance, escort, and light combat roles. Production continued throughout the war and even after it ended. PMZ A750. Earlier Soviet designs like the PMZ A750 played a role in the early years of the war. Though less refined and more difficult to maintain, these motorcycles helped fill critical gaps when the Soviet Union faced massive losses in 1941. Over time, simpler and more reliable designs replaced them. Japan. Rikuo Type 97. Japan approached military motorcycles differently, focusing on reliability and domestic production. The Rikuo Type 97 was the Imperial Japanese Army's primary motorcycle. Built under license from Harley-Davidson, it featured a V-twin engine and robust construction. Rikuo motorcycles were used for dispatch, patrol, and escort duties across China, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands. Though well-built, they struggled in jungle environments where mud, humidity, and poor roads took a heavy toll. Italy. Moto Guzzi Alce. Italy's primary military motorcycle was the Moto Guzzi Alce. Powered by a 500 cubic centimeters single-cylinder engine, it was rugged and reliable but underpowered compared to Allied machines. The Alce was used extensively for communication and reconnaissance in North Africa and Southern Europe. Italian industry struggled to produce large numbers of vehicles, making motorcycles even more critical to maintaining mobility. Benelli 500 M36. Other Italian motorcycles, such as the Benelli 500 M36, saw more limited service. These machines were used primarily in secondary roles and occupied territories. While competent designs, they suffered from the same industrial limitations that plagued much of Italy's war effort. France. Gnome AX2 and Turret G1. France entered the war with several military motorcycles, including the Gnome AX2 and Turret G1. These machines were used during the early stages of the war, particularly in 1940. After France's defeat, many were captured and reused by German forces. Though French motorcycle production was cut short, their designs continued to serve under different flags. Other Axis and Allied nations. FN M12, Belgium. Smaller nations also relied on motorcycles. Belgium's FN M12 saw service before being captured by Germany. Finland used Husqvarna motorcycles during its conflicts with the Soviet Union, valuing their reliability in cold conditions. Nimbus Type C, Denmark. Denmark's Nimbus Type C, with its unique four-cylinder engine, was another example of how different nations adapted motorcycles to military needs. Role of motorcycles in World War II. Throughout World War II, motorcycles served in countless roles. They were messengers when radio communication failed. They scouted enemy positions ahead of advancing forces. They escorted convoys and controlled traffic. They carried medics, engineers, and officers. But they offered no armor, no protection. Riders were exposed to gunfire, artillery, and air attacks. Casualty rates were high, yet motorcycles remained essential because nothing else could replace their speed and flexibility. Decline after the war. As the war ended, the role of motorcycles began to decline. Advances in radio communication, armored vehicles, and eventually helicopters reduced the need for dispatch riders. Yet during World War II, motorcycles were irreplaceable. They connected armies, carried orders, and kept the machinery of war moving. In the end, these motorcycles tell a powerful story. A story of adaptation, necessity, and endurance. They were not glamorous. They did not dominate headlines. But without them, the war would have been slower, more chaotic, and far more costly. From the deserts of Africa to the frozen roads of Russia, from the beaches of Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, motorcycles carried World War II forward one rider at a time.